Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit homegain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to homegain.com. Welcome back to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper, joined today by my guest, Louis Cammarosano, the General Manager of HomeGain. Quick reminder, Real Estate 360 Live is designed to build the Washington, D.C. Metro's markets by giving you good free advice. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, the best number to reach out to us is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Or via the web at realestate360live.com. If you go there, there's an Ask a Question link on the sidebar that you can click on that, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have, whether it's credit-related, finance-related, real estate-related, whatever it may be. Don't be shy. If I can't answer your question, I will make sure that a professional can get a hold of you, by the end of business today. Now, back to how foreclosures affect buyers and sellers. I think it's interesting because there was in statistics that were showing from CoreLogic for foreclosures in process by state. And this kind of gives you a good idea of where there's a large majority of foreclosures being put into the process, at least. And in Virginia, it's only at 1.5% versus Florida's at 11.9%. California's at 2.7%. Nevada's 5.3%. New York's 4.6%. New Jersey is 6.4%. Connecticut 4.1. We have Maryland at 3.1 and DC at 2.7. So you can see in DC metro area we're on the lower end of the spectrum for actual foreclosures and processes, or the starting or initiation of the foreclosure process. And I know we've been getting a lot of questions about, do you think with the thing that just got placed with the $5 billion that the top five big banks have to pay out money to, this is going to affect foreclosures coming to market? And in the DC metro, I really don't, because they've only been trickling out over the last couple of years anyway. I really don't think that you're going to see this big influx of deals coming to the market. People are worried that, should I hurry up and get my house on the market before this foreclosure rush comes? Now, Louis, what's your take on it? Because I think that, in certain areas, I think that is going to hurt the overall pricing. But, here in the DC metropolitan area, I don't think it's going to really have any impact at all.
No, I think where you have a backlog of foreclosures, which you don't seem to have in the DC metro area, but when you do have that backlog, you are going to see more come to market because the banks will now have settled, and they'll realize that if they're able now to abide by whatever rules or regulations they are now obligated under the settlement agreement, they'll start to release them. I think they were holding off before because they weren't sure if the practices that they were using were legitimate, but I think, with the robo-signing and so on, but I think now they should really want to get this behind them and start releasing them, although you and I have talked in the past, one of the reasons they might not want to release them is it does hurt their earnings.
Yeah.
Because once you decide to go into foreclosure, you have to write that loan down, whereas right now, even though the loan is probable to go into foreclosure, they're allowed to keep that loan at the market rate, which is the rate of which they're owed, which makes their balance sheet look artificially high.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see a flood of foreclosures, but there's probably some incentive to start getting more of them out there, the ones that they really think that they should start foreclosing on. But as you and I said, there's probably not much of a impact on the housing market because of this either way in pricing, because the only thing that's really going to impact the housing market is once you get the foreclosures flooded from the system or flooded out of the system and you have a better economy. Otherwise, this is just going to carry on for a long period of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's been some conflicting opinions out there as to, where housing prices are headed. And there's some that believe sellers have a window of opportunity for the next 90 to 120 days that if they can get their house sold before there's an increased pressure, downward pressure on home prices because of foreclosures. But I'm like, don't buy into that, guys. Once again, that's national media talking with their prognosticating to the country to do as a whole. In this market in DC metro area, that is not the case.
Yeah, if you're not going to see a flood of foreclosures, you don't anticipate them based on the data that you understand then there's no rush.
Absolutely. And it's actually the reverse is going to happen. It's actually prices are going up here. So the longer you wait, the more they go up. What I like to tell people, especially when they're like looking at, what they should sell their house for. Lewis, I know you always often say too that, people always think that their house is worth more than it really is. But why not try to really sell your home at the market value to get an offer right away so that you can move on and buy your home of choice? Because what actually is happening there is that, you're selling, you might not make as much money off of it as you would like. You're able to take advantage of that situation on your new home purchase, where you're going to now probably lock in an interest rate that's lower than the one you currently have on the home that you live in now. So there's always an opportunity on the other side.
Yeah, you need somebody to tell you that, because personally what people do is they get emotionally attached to their own point of view, and they dig their heels in mentally that they need to get more for their house. And someone has to point out that might be harming you. And again, that's why I say you talk to a professional who understands your situation and can kind of talk sense into you and say exactly what you just said. You might be better off getting a price on your house, selling it, getting a new mortgage rate on a new house where you want to live.
Yeah, getting a realistic price too, right, Lewis?
And you'll get past the past.
Absolutely.
Move on. Your house is not worth what it once was, but the world has changed. A lot of things aren't what they once were. You're not 28 years old anymore either.
Yeah, and I think that is, for you guys out there, that's great advice, Lewis, is that, it's about moving on. And you know what? A lot of the time that people, they want to stay stuck in the past, it ends up costing them more money in the long run. If you think that your house is worth $500 and the market only stands to bear $450, and you keep it there for 6 to 8 months and ultimately realize that, guess what, you're not selling your house unless you come down to market value, what's the opportunity cost there? You know, in the DC metro area, prices are trending upward. You're losing money. You're losing money because you're going to have to continue making that mortgage payment. And then when you finally do get an offer, your days on market goes up. So a potential buyer looking at your property now might say, well, hey, I might be able to get a deal on this because it hasn't sold.
Right. It's the same thing with the stock market analogy. You can't argue with the market.
Right.
You can't say, well, this stock should be going up. Well, it doesn't go up. You can insist it's undervalued for 10 years. At some point, the market has spoken, and you have to accept that reality, and you may have to sell that stock if it's not going to go up.
Yeah, and when you
the market doesn't see what you see in that stock. Same with your house. The market doesn't see that your home is worth another $50,000 because your child took his first steps in there. It's never going to see that.
Yep. And you were also quoted in the Fox Business article. It's saying that one of the cause of the gap is that realty brokers' tendency to scrub foreclosures and short sales from comparable sales data used to set the seller's asking prices. And I think that's very interesting, that you had brought that up, because, the real thing that goes on behind the scenes here is that, the real estate agent is actually, setting the price for the home. And they're using these comparables, and they try to, rule out the foreclosures and short sales because they're not similar sales. Okay. But what happens when the buyer actually gets the property under contract is then they have to get a loan on this property. And then there's an appraiser that goes out and appraises the property. Well, what happens if there's not other similar normal sales in that community or subdivision? What is the next thing they have to go to? The short sales and the foreclosures. Correct? So ultimately, if you're not taking those into consideration, then you're doing yourself an injustice, because ultimately, if the appraiser doesn't appraise it for what your list price is, because he has to use some of those comps, your house isn't really worth that. So I think a lot of real estate agents actually make this mistake. Is that they don't want to have to use any of those, but if there's not enough, if there's not 3 or 4 comps that the appraiser can use that are normal sales, then they get stuck using those other comparables.
The problem nowadays is, and the home ownership satisfaction survey bears this out, it used to be that a foreclosure or a short sale was not a comparable.
Right.
Because people didn't want them and real estate agents didn't deal with them. It was a special market. Today, people do not have the same view. According to our survey, people are just as satisfied, if not more, with short sales and foreclosures when they buy them because of the bargain aspect. So you have to include short sales and foreclosures when you do the comps. I would argue even in any time, now when I say in any time, even if there are comparable non-short sales and foreclosures, I would throw in the short sales and foreclosures anyway, because that's what people are going to look at. They're going to look at all the available homes in their area that they're willing to list.
Sure. And I mean, if you're buying the home, Lewis, I mean, if you're online and you see, hey, there's this home in the community that's for 300,000, it's foreclosure as is, and then there's a normal sale that's 4.25. It's still embedded in your head that there was a foreclosure at 300,000. It's going to be very difficult for you to get past that.
That's right.
You know, but it's because you're going to think that, well, I can get this bargain over here at 300, or I can have this normal sale that I don't have to do anything to at 4.25. What is it worth doing? And you know what? The answer to that question is really, if there's a person willing and able to buy at that higher price and it can appraise, then it's worth that. But
the problem the seller has, though, Ryan, is that the seller is sitting there, look, I paid my mortgage.
Right.
This is a good home. I should get value. Now, that makes sense, and the point I made in the Fox Business article is that's your problem. The buyer doesn't necessarily have to, step in and pay your price when he can get a better price in a foreclosure.
Yep.
And that's really that's the problem, as you raised at the top of the hour, with, you're the person who's paying their mortgage is in a way penalized. Because he's not going to get his price or her price, and he's going to be stuck with his higher mortgage, while somebody who hasn't paid the mortgage may be able to skate out on a short sale or get some kind of assistance under this new program.
Yeah, and ultimately, at the end of the day, I think, Lewis, you said it best. It's about moving forward, moving on. And, the best thing that you could do, if you're in the market trying to sell your home right now, price it aggressively at market value, not what the value that's in your head.
Well, the value that's in their head, they're still saying, and the point we were making in the article is that they think that the price is valued correctly because they're basing it only compared to other non-foreclosures and short sales.
Yep.
And really, to move on, they have to start saying, well, the reality is foreclosures and short sales make up a part of the market. Now, in the D.C. metro area, if short sales and foreclosures do not make up the majority of the market, then you can kind of, discount those and push them to the side.
Right.
But if you're in an area where, half of them are foreclosures, you have to include them.
Yeah,
the buyers are going to include them.
Yeah, there's actually one client that I was working with, Lewis, that it was actually, I believe, short sales and foreclosures made up mainly short sales, but probably about like 55% of them. So you're guaranteed to have some of those comps used. There's no way around it. You have to. So
buyers are looking at them.
Yeah, and I mean, you may get a little bit more than those houses because it is a normal sale and it's not being sold as is and down the line. But even still, you have to take that into consideration, and that you just really need to get serious about the pricing. Make sure that you're pricing it to sell, you're staging it, you're decluttering, you're doing all the necessary things to allow you to sell so you can move on. Because remember, there is an opportunity on this other side. And if you want to find a potential deal on the other side, you can do so, but only after you've sold your home. For most people, anyway. We're coming up on a break. When we come back, we're going to jump into this week's Credit Fix segment, find out how a client went from 520 scores to 680 in 90 days. Stay right there.